What's going on, guys? This is BunnyMuffins. We finally have set 2 Rise of the Elements. This is the biggest patch ever, including a rehaul of every single champion, or almost every single champion. So this will be a pretty long video covering all the changes and my opinions on them. Just as a disclosure, I have not played the PvE and have no idea what the champions do yet, but we'll learn them together through reading this. Normally, I try to get this out every Tuesday, but I was busy climbing last night. Luckily, I got 2 accounts into Challenger before the season ended, which is fantastic for me since I don't have too much time to play compared to other players. So I'm very happy with those results. Hopefully, in this next set, I could try to push top 100 or top 10. But let's just get right into these changes. So first thing, the board is bigger. It's now 4 rows instead of 3, so this theoretically should increase the skill cap of the game since you have many more choices now. So I actually really like this, giving assassins probably get a slight buff from this, and longer range units get a slight buff. Player damage is now adjusted to be different on every stage. This makes complete sense, so hopefully we'll no longer be like 50 health after Krugs. It doesn't make sense that early game losses count the same as later ones. For example, stage 1 and stage 3 are quite different. Summon units don't deal player damage, but include summoner damage. I actually don't like this change since I think that there should be champions that increase player damage as like a side strategy. So next we have level 8 champion drops are slightly reduced, so there'll be fewer legendaries. I don't know how I feel quite about this yet. I feel like the power spike of a level 2 legendary is so great, but I'm not sure how this actually affects games because we don't know how fast games are. So we don't know if someone can like greed a huge econ or if everyone's spending before legendaries even drop, for example. We don't know if people actually complete level 2 legendaries. So impossible to actually quantify this change yet. Okay, we also have a few quality of life changes. Little legends no longer collide. 4th place doesn't deduct LP anymore. 5th place doesn't reward LP. I don't like this at all because I feel like LP gain should be based on your matchmaking. So for example, if a challenger is playing in a diamond lobby, which happens all the time, placing top 4 should lose you LP because as the challenger player, because you're playing against much weaker players, you should be performing better than 4th in order to stay at the same ranking. Next, we have a few less challengers and GMs in most regions. So the ones that most of our viewers are in, there will be less of them. I like this change. I feel like it was a little too easy to get challenger, which is why I want to really push for top 100 next patch. I'm going to be playing a lot more during this season. Just because I have a full-time job that I'm not always at home either during the week, it's hard for me to play. So I was very happy with the result, but I am glad that they are making this more difficult to get. Next, we have the champion pool changes. So it seems big, but I don't think it's as big as people are making it out to be. There'll be fewer champions in each tier. This means that it doesn't mean that forcing a composition becomes more difficult. It just means that you have to be wary of what other people are going, which is a little harder. So if you do force a comp, it cannot be the most popular composition anymore. But you could force unpopular comps just as you would as before, because when everything is less, nothing really changes. When everything is more, it's the same for every champion. Everyone gets more. So it's like, it only matters if other people are going for it, if that makes sense. So this doesn't really change too much. You just have to be a little more wary of what your opponents are going. You won't see 4 of the same compositions in every game anymore. Well, if you do, those players will probably lose. But like 3 people going for the same compositions, probably like no issue. Next, we have mana regeneration. So this is slightly, I guess it's more stabilized and increased for 3 stars. Also taking damages reduced for mana gain. So let's see. So frontline champions who are ulti reliant got slightly weaker based on this change, but since all the champions are different, this shouldn't really change anything from before since it's a whole new set, so we don't really know how they work or how powerful their ultimates are. So I'm just going to assume Riot just found this very necessary to add into the game. I won't really comment too much on it. Next, we have item changes. So Curse Blade got removed. This is a little sad. I like the item a lot since its concept can give like a chance comeback mechanic. Let's say that people get level 3s, it's like a counter to level 3s. There's like no counter to them anymore. It's also like really strong late game before, which not a lot of people knew about, I felt, and I kind of took advantage of that. So Runons is now a bow item, makes complete sense. I have no idea why it was a spatula item before, and we now have new spatula items that compensate for all the new classes and origins. So with Runons removed as well, like you can't use spatula to build Runons, compositions that did not need a Runons or did not need a spatula item got slightly weaker. Since you're forced to build a spatula item if it drops from a neutral camp. So for example, if I'm running, let's say, wild sorcerers or wild shapeshifters and sorcerers last patch, it's like a 7-person comp, 7 to 8-person comp. You don't really gain much more strength from the spatula anymore. You'll have to use it for something else. Instead of making like a Runon's Hurricane. So that is a slight change. So maybe that composition wants to use the spatula effect and then go to level 9, for example, to get like the maximum output that they can get from that composition, or go something else completely entirely. So there are a bunch of various stat changes. Spatula no longer gives double stats. Chain Vest buffed, which is good. Death Cap buffed, which is good, but I think it's a little too much. Oh wow. Dragon Claw got completely gutted, 75% to 50%. This is like a 33% difference, which is huge because this is a pretty terrible item now, unless the entire meta is spell damage, which I highly doubt it will be. Giant Slayer finally got nerfed. It does 8% current health physical damage. I have no idea why they couldn't make this change earlier, but I'm finally glad they addressed it. It should still be usable at this state, but it definitely will not be OP since there's now counterplay. Guardian Angel got nerfed, but that shouldn't really matter. Guardian Angel is as good as the champions are who can use it, so champions with channeled abilities are great with it, and champions with game-changing ultimates that have to go off are really great with it. For example, Gnar in the last patch. But nerfing it doesn't really do anything. We just have to find out how strong champions can utilize Guardian Angels. That's going to decide how good it is. Hand of Justice got buffed. This is great. Even though I thought this item would be very strong, it's turned out to be quite weak. So I'm glad they gave it a little more power. Wow, I do not like this Ionic Spark damage change. Ionic Spark, it's only strong because dragons were played, so the true damage is the counter. However, dragons are gone now, so this really shouldn't be a problem anymore. Ludens got nerfed as well. Okay, so Riot just really hates early game items, apparently. I really like them, so that's kind of a shame. Negatron got buffed, so this should help the Dragon Claw nerf slightly. Recurve got nerfed. I'm not sure why, since I thought this was like a middle of the pack item, at least on the current patch, or the previous patch. Runons now shoots an extra bolt per copy. Okay, so what this means is that before you could stack Runons on someone, so when you put the first Runons on someone, they shoot 2 bolts. When you put the second one on, they shoot 4 bolts. But now it's only going to shoot 1 extra per Runon. So instead of 4, they'll only shoot 3 now. So also its damage got decreased. This makes sense since it no longer requires a spatula, so it makes sense that they made it slightly weaker. Thieves' Gloves. Okay, so this one, they just buffed it a little bit. We won't know the actual values. There's a table for it out there on Twitter from someone from Riot, if you really want to know how they changed it. But they just buffed it slightly, which is fine, I guess. It was underperforming slightly, but I think that was just based on the champions that were being played last patch. I still think it's a very strong item. So now on to item drops. We have gold drops reduced slightly and spatula drops reduced a lot. So that means if spatula items are strong, we'll see them highly contested on the carousel. I like the dragon change giving orbs. This gives more RNG, but makes it a little more interesting if you have leftover items after raptors. For example, if you have double armor, you no longer have to make a thornmail. However, I think this should just be 1 orb instead of 2, because getting 2, that's a lot of power you can get. Lastly, Elder and Rift Herald do the same thing but with a better orb. So essentially what this means, it's like if you're playing a card game, you just are able to draw more cards or like play more rounds. So for example, in poker, you'll instead of playing 4 hands like we did last patch, we'll play like 5 hands this time. So I guess there is more potential for RNG, but it should be balanced out since there are now more items for everyone. None of this other stuff seems too important. Okay, so let's move on to the champions now. I'm gonna scroll up here. Okay, so I did hear some things about this before, so there's like a different element for each game. Keep in mind on the champions that Riot didn't release all their stats here, so it's truly impossible to tell who would be OP or not, but we can guess based on their abilities and traits. So first we have Crystal. We have Skarner, Taric, and Ashe. No idea why Ashe is a glacial, or is not a glacial, but let's ignore that for now. They get a maximum limit to the amount of damage that they take from a single attack or ability. This means that they're probably good against mages, assassins, and carries. Perhaps if we want to soft counter strong assassins, such as like old Akali, we'd want to play Ashe as our damage source, maybe, since she'd take less damage. This would also be good against like Aatrox for your frontliners. So you could put like Skarner or Taric in the front line and they'll tank Aatrox, no problem. So next we have Desert. This is Renekton, Sivir, Azir, and Kha'Zix. Not sure why Kha'Zix is in the desert, but these champions reduce enemy armor. I'm guessing this is a 2 and 4 count synergy. Great for complementing AD-oriented teams or AD carries as well. This is pretty much Void, like an old version of Void that they had before. Electric is Ornn, Volibear, and Zed. Nothing about Zed's electric, and he has an electric skin, so I guess they're using skins for champions. But I think I'll stop pointing out these weird differences for now, or inconsistencies. Electric champions deal damage to adjacent enemies when critically striking or struck. Assassins, such as Zed, that seems awesome for them, since he's built around it, so electric comp's probably going to revolve around Zed and Assassins. That'd be really cool, because he'll end up dealing a ton of damage. Next we have Glacial. So this is the same effect, they just like stun, on-hit stun. But we have Warwick, Volibear, Braum, Ezreal, and Olaf. I'm sorry, but like Ezreal and Warwick are not Glacials, clearly, but I guess I could use a skin to make it so. We have Inferno next. Zyra, Diana, Varus, Kiana, Kindred, Annie, and Brand. So these champions can ignite squares and deal damage to enemies standing in the fire. So this is probably really good against rapid fire cannon users and range units in general. So next we have Light, which is Nasus, Vayne, Jax, Aatrox, Soraka, Yorick. So they can heal other Light champions upon death and grant attack speed for the remainder of the round. So this sounds pretty awesome. It's like mini redemption, and you also have a repeating crossbow, like tossed around your team. Next we have Steel champion. Oh, they're just 2 of them. Rek'Sai and Nocturne. So they can become immune to damage when they drop below 50% health. I imagine that this is pretty good with Rage Blade or any other stacking item. Terrible with Redemption and terrible with Guardian Angel, since Guardian Angel probably won't heal them past 50% health. But actually, they kind of have like a built-in Guardian Angel, so that's why I guess I can't use it very effectively. So actually, sorry, they're probably good with the Redemption with someone else holding it on your team, so they could go below 50% health, get the immunity, and then like a redemption from someone else heals them back up so they get it again. That's what I'm guessing. Oh, lifesteal items would be fantastic on them then. I wonder if it could even proc twice. Maybe it only procs once per life. So mountains, we have Talia, Kiana, and Malphite, which gives a massive shield to a random ally. So this is pretty much giving noble buff. Just like lots of survivability for one person. We have Ocean next, which is Vladimir, Thresh, Syndra, Kiana, Nautilus, and Nami. So wow, Kiana's in a lot of them. This gives your team mana periodically. So this is a great support element, kind of like having Twisted Fate. Next we have Poison, which is Kogmaw, Dr. Mundo, Twitch, and Singe. and they cause enemies to have increased mana cost on their abilities. I wonder if this is a flat amount or percentage based. If it was a flat amount, this would destroy Lucian, for example. However, if it's percentage based, Pantheon would have a very difficult time since he has around 200 mana, so it's like 10% on him would be 20 mana versus 10% on Varus would be like 33 mana. But I like this. I'm glad that it's not like damage over time. That'd be kind of boring because that's like what poison always is. But I guess this is poisoning them in like in their mana flow instead. That's a cool concept. Shadow is Malzahar, Kindred, Vhagar, Scion, and Master Yi. These champions deal increased damage for the first few seconds of combat and after takedowns, increasing to all of them when a lot are played. So I'm guessing what a lot is maybe like 4 of them. But this is insane resets. Probably amazing if one of them's an assassin. I don't think any of these are though, just based on their descriptions. Though if Master Yi is probably a Blade Master, but we'll find out later. I can see like Vhagar just like, so I think what should happen here is like when Vhagar kills someone with his ultimate, Master Yi just goes like insane if you run 4 of them. So that'd be really cool to watch. Wind is Yasuo, Kiana, and Janna. And they give your team dodge chance, which is huge since this is only a 2-person synergy, deploying both Wind champions. It's like giving Knight or Guardian buff to your team, like physical damage reduction. I guess that's Guardian, not Knight. Lastly, we have Woodland. This is Maokai, Ivern, Nico, and LeBlanc. Having them causes one of them to randomly create a clone of themselves. Not sure how Ivern or Maokai fit this element, but like they fit Woodland, but I'm not sure how creating a clone is part of their kit. But this is like huge RNG. Like, imagine if you have like, I'm assuming you stack like 3-item LeBlanc to smurf on some teams, but like it's like a 1 in 4 every time. That seems like comical. It's like you either get an extra like tank unit or you get like a 3-item stack carry. Like that seems a little too RNG based. It's kind of like Phantom buff, but for yourself instead of the enemy team. Maybe that's what they're going for. Because getting Phantom feels really terrible, but like maybe if the other team gets like a huge buff, it doesn't feel as bad, but keeps that like luck element in the game, which is makes it fun, you know, and gives it replay value. So next is the classes. So first one's Singed. He's the only alchemist, and he walks through units and never stops. All right, that's hilarious. I can already see where Singed is going, which is great. Yeah, I was wondering how they could fit what Singed does into an ability, but I guess making like a class for him where he like a unique class is a way to do it. That's awesome. Assassins, we have Diana, LeBlanc, Kiana, Nocturne, Kha'Zix, and Zed. So they sneak across the battlefield. Okay, that's weird. So they jumped in the last patch. I wonder if sneak means anything different. For example, with Frozen Heart, it technically goes over enemy champions and makes them adjacent to it. But I wonder if Frozen Heart still works with that. So the trait bonus hasn't changed, but we'll see if this wording matters. Next we have Avatar. The only one's Lux, and her element is counted twice for a trait. Berserkers are Renekton, Jax, Volibear, Mundo, Scion, and Olaf. Their attacks have a chance to deal damage in a cone, so this would be like Titanic Hydra, so it might be a good idea to stack them for massive AoE damage. Blade Masters are Yasuo, Sivir, Aatrox, and Yi. The Blade Master effect's still the same, and I could see Yi going crazy with his Shadow synergy since he starts the game with increased attack speed. It was either increased attack speed or damage, I forget, but if it is attack speed, here, let's just go back a tiny bit. So the first few seconds of combat, okay, so it's just increased damage, so it doesn't really snowball him that much. It should be attack speed then. That'd be really cool to watch. But yeah, Yi's probably gonna be the carry in this meta. Oh, I skipped one. So next we have Summoner, which is Zyra, Malzahar, Azir, Annie, Yorick, and Zed. And they increase the health of and duration of spawned allies. Pets also gain the class and element bonuses, so that's pretty interesting. Druids are Ivern, Maokai, Nico. So these are all the woodland creatures. So woodland and druids probably go hand in hand. But they just have health regeneration, so that's kind of boring. But you only need 2 of them. So next we have mages. Mages are Vladimir, Talia, Syndra, Vhagar, LeBlanc, and Brand. So these guys have a chance to cast an ability twice. It's essentially like critically striking, but that seems insane. Or maybe it's like sorcerers, because it's like sorcerers with like 100% increased damage if they cast twice. So you're gonna have to do the math. If it's like 30% chance to cast twice, then it's like 30% increased damage on average. However, this only affects mages instead of your whole team, so that's kind of interesting too. It makes a lot more sense. I don't understand why last patch sorcerers buffed your entire team. Like, they should only buff themselves, right? Mystics are Soraka, Janna, Master Yi, and Nami. They give allies more magic resist. So not sure why Yi is included in this, but because it doesn't really synergize with them. But this is great as like the support class. It's like Dragon buff for your whole team. But let's see how much magic resist it actually gives, if it's actually like game changing. Next we have Predator, Warwick, Kogmaw, Skarner, and Rek'Sai. And so these champions all have an execute ability. So I wonder what the threshold is, like the cutoff for execution, because that has like a huge implication on whether or not they're good. Rangers are Vayne, Varus, Ezreal, Kindred, Ashe, and Twitch, and the buff hasn't changed. Lastly, we have Wardens, Ornn, Nasus, Thresh, Braum, Nautilus, Taric, or Malphite, and Taric. And they get armor when deployed. So this is essentially like the generic tank class. Let's say they replace knights, but they only buff themselves. They're like guardian buffs, but they're like 6 of them. So they just give armor to themselves. It makes a lot more sense than like knight buff from last patch. I don't get why knight buff reduced damage for your entire team. Seemed kind of silly. So I like that. And it's like, so these guys are the anti-attack damage, and then the mystics are the anti-ability power. So next we go on to the champions, so this should be more fun. Diana shields herself with flames and explodes on hit. So this is great since she's an assassin, since she'll be in the middle of the enemy team and she'll have this like AoE around her. That'd be pretty cool. Ivern shields the lowest health ally. This is great, especially with Phantom gone, to like create some very fun to watch matches. So next we have Kogmaw. He shoots a random acid. So, okay, wow. This is so much RNG. It's crazy. Especially when combined with this Predator trait and Poison trait. You could like just hit something completely useless versus this thing that can be instantly killed with the Predator passive. So I'm not too sure how I feel about this. It's just like super RNG crazy. Next we have Maokai. He's just like a super tank with sap magic. He heals after being hit by a spell. Nasus, he enrages, giving him bonus health and like damage around him, kind of like Sunfire Capes. I wish they made Sunfire Cape in the game as an item. It builds out of like Chain Vest and Giant's Belt in the real game. So it's like an actual League of Legends item. I don't know why they got red buff instead for that. Ornn breathes lightning in a cone and it increases their chance to be critically struck. This is great synergy with Zed since they're both electric, and like Zed's an assassin, so they revolve around critical strikes. Sounds like huge synergy with like Infinity Edge. Yeah, a lot of potential. It's a great support way to introduce like a support champion without like being boring. This is like pretty fun, I think. Next we have Renekton. He damages adjacent allies or adjacent enemies and heals himself. So he's just Darius. They just remade Darius. Talia targets a random enemy and knocks them towards you if they're ranged and away if melee. So that's really cool. It's adaptive, and I like this creativity coming from Riot here. That's really cool. Vayne, okay, Vayne's the same. Right as I give like Riot props, they have like Renekton, which is Darius, and then Vayne just unchanged. Oh, but Vayne's cool because she has light and ranger. So whenever someone from light dies, they give a random light user attack speed. So it's like she could have like crazy attack speeds like later in the game. So next we have Vladimir, drains health, pretty boring. Warwick's the same as before. Zyra spawns 2 plants, so that's really cool. The plants proc Inferno as well, so that'd be awesome because Summoner summons like they have the same traits as whatever Zyra is. So next we're on to tier 2. Brahm's the same. Jax has a dodge and a stun, so Jax is a very good attack damage counter. So he's like, if Draven exists in this game, he's like gonna be super good against Draven. LeBlanc has a single target chain with, okay, so with her mage buff, it should be pretty cool because then she shoots 2 chains. It's kind of like a mini Morgana ultimate. But the question is, does the mage proc on a different target? It doesn't. I don't think so because it says like nearest enemy. So does she just shoot 2 chains at the same person? It seems kind of silly because the stun duration would be the same. Maybe they do something special with her. We'll find out. Next is Malzahar. Malzahar creates a portal that spawns minions, more stars, more minions. Nico throws a seed at a random enemy and explodes 3 times in a larger and larger radius. That looks really awesome. It seems pretty OP based on reading it, but again, we don't know how much damage it actually does, but that seems really cool. Rek'Sai bites her target, dealing true damage. Doesn't really synergize with the Predator, since like true damage doesn't matter if they get instantly killed after a certain point anyways. So not sure how good that will be. Skarner shields himself and gains bonus attack speed. So with this, that just means if his stats are really bad, this ability is going to be bad. If his stats are really good, he's going to be really good. So it just depends where his stats are relative to the rest of the champions. Next we have Syndra shoots a sphere, boring. Thresh shields the lowest ally. So it's similar to Ivern, but it's like an AoE shield, so he's obviously better than Ivern, but it makes sense because he's a 3 cost and Ivern's a 1 cost. Next we have Varus. Ooh, Varus is the same, but he now deals more damage from Inferno. I kind of wish they made Arclight Varus and put him in the light synergy. Because he'd be great to receive the light element buff with like higher attack speed, and like Varus, his character, he's like one of my favorite League of Legends characters. He's all about like in his lore making like a last stand, so it would make so much more sense if he was a light character. That'd be really awesome. Because yeah, he's all about like having this last stand, like the last archer to like defend his the realm or whatever he's in. So Volibear bites his target, dealing damage. He has a built-in execute and restores mana if he kills something. So this could be really snowbally, really fun to watch, and different from the old Volibear. So we have Yasuo. Yasuo's a 3 cost now, and he also got changed. So he attacks the enemies with the most items with this ability. This is a nice addition. It's like a counter to stacked units. Oh wait, no, these are 2 costs. Sorry, I thought this was 3 costs, but still the same. Yeah. Or my opinions on them are still the same. So tier 3, we have Aatrox. He's the same. Azir has Sand Soldiers. Mundo has a Toxic Cloud around himself that damages adjacent enemies and heals himself. That seems pretty cool. Kind of like a Drain. He's like mini Swain, right? Ezreal shoots a Shard of Ice, which applies on hit effects. So it applies on hits. So great for rangers with on hit items. But I wonder if this counts as an auto attack for Static Shiv. Since Static Shiv isn't an on hit effect, I don't think. It's just every 3 attacks. But does his Shard of Ice count as an attack? We'll find out, you know. Interesting that they don't make Ezreal Mystic, because this ability is technically called like Mystic Shot, but whatever. Kindred, okay, tumbles away and damages an enemy. I miss her. I'm gonna miss her old ultimate. It was like very interesting to use positioning wise, especially with Hextech gone. Like she'd probably be OP with Hextech gone. Next we have Nautilus, because you can finally itemize her and make sure that she gets her ulti off. So next we have Nautilus. He sends a depth charge at the furthest champion, knocking them up for a really long time. So he's the new Leona. Riot said how bad of a design Leona was, and then they just remake Leona. However, I wonder if the enemies between Nautilus and his target get knocked up as well, because that's how it works in regular League of Legends, but it doesn't really say anything here about it. Next we have Nocturne. He has a 3-hit passive, which damages adjacent enemies and heals him. So they're introducing more AoE assassins, which I like, since they jump in the middle of enemy teams. That's awesome. Kiana is a different element depending on the game. Yes, I knew that from reading something before. So she dashes to the side of her target and stuns enemies in a line. So this sounds pretty OP at 3 costs. I guess it depends how far the projectile is. I guess she's similar to Poppy, but she's going to be an assassin. Next we have Scion. He smashes an area in front of him after a delay and knocks up and damages enemies. Seems OP depending on the range and radius. Sivir's attack bounces, so she's an AoE attack damage carry, which is something we haven't seen before. I guess you could kind of count Jinx, but I think this is much different. So at 3 costs, it goes to wonder if she could actually carry a game at like as a 3 cost, since most of our carries in the past have been 4 or 5 costs, such as Draven, Jinx, Yasuo. So next we have Soraka. I guess Sivir could be a really good item holder then. So next we have Soraka. She just hushes enemies. Veigar's the same. Okay, so now for the 4 cost. First we have Annie. She summons Tibbers to a nearby hex, and Tibbers attacks nearby enemies. So it doesn't mention a stun, which is what she normally does in the regular game, which is odd because at a 4 cost, I feel like having a stun and a bear would be something that could be done because 4 cost is pretty expensive, right? But seems pretty cool. Tibbers probably does a lot of damage. It's probably like Elemental Golem on crack or something. So next we have Ashe. She gains attack speed and shoots multiple shots. However, she lost Glacial Synergy, so I don't know if this is even good, you know? She's just like a regular ranger, and Crystal's just tanking this, so I think Ashe is going to be pretty terrible, right? I guess you could stack a lot of on-hit effects on her, or like static shivs on her, and then she just doesn't die as quickly. I guess that's a way you could use her, because she has a built-in defensive item, or defensive trait. Yeah, so maybe she won't be terrible. Depends how good items are then. So if items are very OP, then she's going to be OP, but if items aren't that strong, versus like non-item users, then she's not going to be that great. So Brand's the same. Janna knocks back enemies and heals allies, so she's like the stereotypical assassin counter, which makes complete sense. Kha'Zix, he stealths and becomes untargetable, then critically strikes. So this doesn't really do much with Desert or resets, which kind of makes me sad. And apart from being untargetable, he's pretty much the same champion as before. He just has an ability with like high single target damage, but at 4 costs with his stat buffs, I wonder if he's actually good. And I guess he doesn't have to rely on isolation anymore. So next we have Malphite, and it's his ultimate and AoE knockup. Great ability. I'm assuming this is going to replace like Sejuani and Cho'Gath. It doesn't really seem like it has a delay similar to the other champions, but I'm assuming it has a smaller radius than Sejuani and Cho'Gath. So next we have Olaf. Olaf gets permanent, okay, for the rest, it's like permanent attack speed and lifesteal and is immune to CC. Based on the wording, I'm not sure which effect is only for a few seconds, but I guess we'll find out soon. Maybe I'm just reading it wrong. Twitch, okay, whoa. Infinite range and piercing bolt. So this is like the new Jinx hyper carry. This ability sounds so cool. Poison increases mana cost, as we learned before, for enemy champions. So his ultimate is like completely game changing. I actually can't wait to play Twitch. I'm assuming he applies on hit effects as well, so he'll be amazing with like Rage Blade and on hit items. Yorick blesses low health allies and revives them when they die. So really cool on this champion. Like, good job, Riot. That seems really cool. More stars, more targets. Okay, that seems OP now. But especially if they have their items, right? That's pretty cool. Okay, so finally the legendaries. Let's start off with Master Yi. Master Yi meditates and heals a lot, and then his attacks deal bonus on hit damage. So this is a little boring, but I feel like he has a lot of potential with Blade Master, because Blade Masters love on hit effects, and he just gets a built-in one. Also at 5 costs, he's like both a tank and like a lot of damage. So he's kind of like Yasuo from last patch, and he's a Blade Master too. Yeah, he's Yasuo. Um, next, we have Nami sends out a massive tidal wave, damaging and knocking people up. It also buffs your team with on-hit magic damage. I really like this direction that Riot's taking, introducing a lot of late game oriented support champions that aren't just CC bots like Sejuani. That's really cool. So next we have Singe. He puts poison everywhere. Hilarious. He'll probably be like he'd probably be the legendary that you could like play in any composition because he's the only alchemist. And you're not gonna complain about like a poison trait. Maybe just like if it's like a 2-person synergy, just like throw him in, you know, and like cause people to need more mana. Next we have Taric. Taric gives invulnerability to nearby allies. This is awesome. It's like the new Kindred. Zed. Okay, so Zed creates a clone of himself, which can also cast other clones. So he's like the epitome of like a late game carry. I can see this getting out of hand really fast, especially with yeah, it'll just like I guess people won't live long against him anyway since he's an assassin. So next we have Lux at a 7 cost, and there's 1 for every element, and then for the rest of the game, Lux becomes the same element after you buy the first one. And she has a giant laser that deals damage and restores damage based on, or restores mana based on enemies hit. So she's like Aurelion Soul on crack, or like Aurelion Soul with built-in Spirit Trojans. So we already went over the items, so I'm gonna skip over this. So at the bottom, okay, yeah. So there's like each game has a different element. So every game's gonna be different. There are like 4 different types of games, and Kiana is based on the elements, and there's an elemental hex. So this is a random hex, and so one of the squares that we have will be like blessed with an element, and we also get a second one at stage 3-1. And they're the same on everyone's board. So essentially, on that square, your character is going to get a buff. So Inferno increases attack speed for combat. Ocean gives mana at the start. Mountain gives permanent health that stacks between rounds and remains if the champions are moved off the hex. So this is great for like permanent team members. For example, in like last meta or last patch, you could, if you're running like planning on running 4 wilds, you could just keep Warwick or Nidalee on that health hex, and they'll just be permanently buffed, which is kind of cool. So lastly, we have Wind. Wind gives the chance to dodge. When this happens, you'll definitely want to stack Iceborne Gauntlets. That's going to be the most OP item in the game. One interesting thing this patch is that there's no item or trait that gives like attacks can't miss. So this is going to make Iceborne actually completely OP, more OP than it already is today. This elemental hex also takes up an item slot, so it discourages 3 item stacking. So Riot's been trying to go for that a lot. They have like Yasuo, now the hexes. So that's good. It improves like game diversity. It's not like the same like, oh, like I have a 3 item Draven every game, you know? So these changes make the game much more dynamic. From a first look, it seems like it'll reward the better player much more. However, I have heard that Riot thinks that the better player wins too much currently. So it's interesting that they're making these changes, such as like increasing the number of board spaces, to give people more options. Because with more options, there are more decisions. So the better player should technically win more with that. But new things are always fun. There's definitely going to be a huge learning curve with all these new champions and the new board. But I'm definitely excited. Since ranked is down, I actually will be taking a short break from the game, but don't worry, I'm still going to be posting videos. I'm still going to be keeping track of the meta. I just won't be playing as much as I have until ranked is back. Don't worry. Expect a new positioning guide, economy management, leveling, and composition guides from me immediately once rank begins again, and this will be on November 20th. So if you want to be notified immediately when I post those videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below the video. I'll also be taking this break to improve many different things on my channel, so expect like new types of videos and enhancements in the future. again, thanks so much for sticking through with this with me. I know it was a long video, but there are a ton of things to cover. As usual, if you found this useful, share it with other players that you know. Hit the like button. It helps me out so, so much. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on my socials below.